edge, and I'll place that on top of here, and I'll add the Find Edges effect to it, and I'll set it to inverse, and I'll lower the opacity to maybe 10% and set it to add. And here we can actually make out the displacement that we're getting. We're not getting really much displacement, so I might go back to the effect and bump these up to maybe 8. And I can just do a quick RAM preview here. And we can see the displacement taking place. Nice. So let's go back to the edges, the luminance one, and I'm actually going to take a screenshot here just so I can see for reference. I think I might want to increase the brightness of this layer here a little bit more, even though I'm being mindful of the values clipping on the top of his head here. So let's preview the difference that made. Yep, I'm looking at these hips. I actually liked it better before. Sorry about that waste of time. But it's always good to experiment with different values to make sure you're getting the best look. So that's looking quite good for the general effect. So we're getting the displacement based off of the contours of the body. Now I want to do another render layer of the topology of him. So it'll be pretty much a depth map. So we could have rendered it in this past, but I just wanted to explain things one at a time and see why we need certain things. We're getting the displacement from his shape, but I just want to add that little extra level of depth to the displacement because it's feeling quite flat at the moment. So to do that, let's go back into Maya, and I'll duplicate this matte plastic layer. I'll copy that, and I'll call this one depth, and I'll duplicate this character again. I'll call this one man depth, and I'll hide him, and I'll remove, oops, let me just go to my outliner for a moment. Let me unhide the man matte plastic and actually remove that from this layer. He's very stubborn, he doesn't want to be removed from the depth layer. Remove, thank you. And I'll show this man, so I only have the one character on this layer, and it's the man depth. And the reason I again am duplicating the object each time is because for this one I'm actually going to manipulate his UV map. So I'm going to go to the hypershade here, and I'm going to create a ramp shader in the Maya, and I'm going to assign that to the character. Whoops, click on the character, right click, assign material texture to selection, and if I turn on the material I can see the ramp. Now the UV map hasn't really worked for us because of our current shader that we're using, so let me first modify this ramp. And I don't want this one in the middle, I just want it to go from black to white. So I'll make this color white, I'll make this color black, and let's change the UV settings. Create UV's planar mapping. This time I might use the y-axis and insert the projection before the deformers, and I'll apply that. And we can see that it's going from, if I can go to object mode, we can see that it's going from black to white just for Myself, I'd like to swap these around, just because I like to view it the other way around, like a normal depth map. That's easier for me to look at. So that's looking pretty good. It's going from white to black, and we can just render this layer out on its own. So I'll turn these ones off. I might just go to the material itself, the ramp material, and bump up the ambient color to 0.5 here, and see how that goes. Just do a test render again, and there, it's only taking 2 seconds to render. I might just take that off and see. It's still taking 2 seconds, but could save us a few milliseconds. So let's batch render this, and I'll see you when it's done. So I've just imported that depth render layer that we just rendered, so I'll drag that into a new composition. And I realized we probably should have actually bumped the ambient color up more than we did. We set it to 0.5, so we're only getting half the values that we could have gotten. It's not going to make too much of a difference, but if you were rendering it out yourself, bump it up to 1 instead of 0.5. I'm just going to add a levels adjustment to compensate for the difference that it made, to get something like this. So we're getting lighter values here and darker values there. And this will be called it's not a master depth, this will be called the depth. And in the displacement layer, I'll add that in here and turn it off. And let me go to a point in time where we can sort of see it on an angle. It's quite hard to see. I'll put it somewhere around here, and with the footage I will duplicate the displacement map, and this one will be using the depth. And well, that's pretty much it. I might just lower these values a little bit, and if we turn that off and on, we can see the difference that it's making. Just adding another layer of depth to this scene, to the invisibility displacement. And let's just take a look at it from another angle. It's before, that's after. It's quite subtle. And also, when you're working with these displacement maps, sometimes I like to just change the order around, just to see what it looks like, to see which one I prefer. I don't know what I like better. I think I like this better, having the depth at the back. And also just check it at different points in time to make sure. Yep, I definitely prefer it this way. Whoa, I just changed it. Sometimes when things are similar, it's hard to tell what you prefer. Well, I think I'll leave it like this. Now let's actually go back and into Maya and maybe render out some of the skin and the shadows. Actually, before I do that, it's important to do a little bit of planning here. I need to know the duration of the transition itself from visible to invisible. So I need to work out what the duration of my transition is, and I thought it would be cool to do a fractal transition instead of just a global opacity transition. So let's actually create that now, and I'm going to create it inside of After Effects because the fractal noise, although you can generate it in Maya, I definitely like some of the options we get inside of After Effects. So I'm going to create a new composition and make it maybe 2048 squared. Oops. And I might make this maybe 60 frames in duration. And I'll create a new solid, Control Y, call this fractal noise, and I'll add the fractal noise modifier for effect, generate fractal noise, and I'll set this to soft clamp, maximum complexity, and the contrast. I want it to go from white to black. I'll set the contrast to something that looks good, and then I'll keyframe the brightness over the duration. Now, although it's 60 frames here, we're not actually going to get 60 frames. A 2-second transition would be quite a long time. We want the invisibility to snap on and off quite quickly. So I'm going to go from black to white. So brightness all the way to black, pretty much. There is a little bit of values here, luminance values, that we'll be dealing with later on. And maybe 723. So if you set the value to the same value as the contrast, it gives you pretty much white. We're getting the same problem as we did before with the black. It's not completely white, but again, we'll be sorting that out later. And the frames we get, as I said, we're not getting all 60 frames. We're pretty much, what happens between here and the end isn't very much. So I'd like to actually shorten this composition to what I think is the most important parts. So I'm sort of trimming maybe 10 frames from each side, and I'll trim the composition. Actually, I won't. I will leave it as is, just so I can modify these keyframes if I need to. So this is our transition. It's looking a little small. I'd like to increase the size, so I'm going to transform, increase the scale a bit, something like this. And I'll also keyframe the evolution just a little bit, maybe 90 degrees. So this is what's going to bring our character from naked to invisible. So it's these values here, it's a lot of grey. I need more contrast. I need black and white. I don't want so much grey. So I'm going to bump the contrast up to maybe 1200, and then set this to negative 1200, and this one here to positive 1200. And that's a better effect that I'm getting here. I really like the ease key. Sorry, the shortcut is the shortcut for the record. So I'll just change that manually. That does actually shorten the overall duration by quite a lot. I'm just weighing up how much I like this transition more versus the fact that it's way shorter, which I don't like. I might actually set those back to the way they were. I could just control click on them. And let's address this problem of the the values not being completely opaque, so completely white or black, because that will actually make the character transparent when we need him to be solid. So I'll add a brightness and contrast to this layer here, and at the start the brightness I'll set a keyframe. I'm just hitting U to look at all these keyframes here, and at the end I'll set a keyframe, and maybe about 10 frames in I'll set a keyframe, and I think the highest value I'm getting here is about maybe 12 or 13, so I might minus it 15 values just to be completely certain, and that way we're getting pitch black to start off with instead of grey. And I'll do the same here, maybe 10 frames, and it starts off here and then goes to plus 13 to make this completely white. I might actually increase the duration of these